Possibilities with AARP, because AARP believes that no one's possibilities should ever be limited as they age. Hi, I'm Elaine Werner. I am your host for Real Possibilities with AARP. I am on staff for the nonprofit statewide office of AARP, Senior Program Specialist for Public Outreach and Volunteer Engagement. And AARP has a statement that says that we want to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And on that note, most of us want to age comfortably in our local communities. So local is the operative word today. AARP Connecticut, going local in your community. We have a two-part show. My first guest has gone local all over the state as one of our lead volunteers and member of our executive council. And then we're going to tell you about a great opportunity. AARP is offering a community grant, and one of the recipients of that grant already will be here to tell his story about receiving funds from AARP to beautify and enhance his community, a community right here in the state of Connecticut. So firstly, I would like to welcome our first guest, who is a member of our executive council. Our executive council plays a partnership role with our state director, helps support the development and sustain our very robust volunteer program throughout the state, helps with our strategic plan, and so that we can bring our programs to you locally in the community, and is also a lead volunteer with us. So I happily welcome Marilyn Diaz.
Hi, thank you, Elaine. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm excited.
Well, we're pleased to have you, Marilyn. And first I'd like to begin with, if you can tell our viewer just briefly a little bit about what brought you to AARP.
Well, you know what? You said the operative word today was local.
Yes.
And it was because AARP came to the community locally. They knew that they needed to reach out to the community where they operate. And so they held an event at a local restaurant. And there I was. And I was so impressed by the staff, everyone who was there, talking about AARP and getting rid of some of those myths that exist about AARP, because AARP is not just about discounts and insurance. We have our nonprofit side. And I was so impressed by the number of programs that were available that people really didn't take advantage of, including myself. And just listening to the plethora of programs and knowing that in my community, we needed to spread that word. And so I was really excited and wanted to become a part of this whole movement of reaching out to the community and sharing all of the wealth of programs and knowledge that was out there. And you guys allowed me to do that. And so I'm very pleased to do that.
We found each other at that, Marilyn, and we often like to say at AARP that we like to do events that are fun with purpose. That was a really fun night.
I remember
a fun night. That night we were reaching out to the Hispanic Latino community.
Exactly.
So we had flamenco entertainers. We had a free glass of wine for everybody that came in.
Yes, we did.
We sort of tried to tune the food and the wine to the Hispanic Latino theme, and I'm glad to hear the reaction you had. It really warms my heart. And we spotted you there too, because we saw that you were engaged. And Marilyn, as a result, has been able to refer future volunteers to us and help build our outreach, particularly we're going to get to in a moment, the Hispanic Latino community.
Latino outreach, exactly.
But Marilyn is also a member of what we call our regional impact teams. We have teams of volunteers throughout the state. We're building out more regions, so if you want to volunteer with us and you don't find a team in your part of the state, doesn't mean you can't volunteer. Plenty of opportunities, but we hope eventually, Marilyn, as you know, you're working with us on this, that we will have regional impact teams throughout the state. But that is a great way that you can get involved, again, the operative word of the program, locally. So if you could elaborate a little bit on our regional impact team.
That is another thing that I was so impressed by, because what AARP does is it doesn't go into a community and dictate what needs to happen. Rather, it assesses what needs to happen, and the volunteers are so important. The regional impact teams are currently in the Bridgeport area and New Haven and Hartford.
Correct.
And I am part of Hartford, and we must know that the needs are in Hartford may be different from Bridgeport.
Exactly.
And who knows that better other than the people that live there? And so I have had the opportunity to be a part of each of those regional impact teams and sit back and listen and see how volunteers are engaged and reflecting what those needs are. And you mentioned the Latino community too,
Right.
and we need more volunteers to reach out and that reflect those local needs. And the reason that I had gone to those regional impact teams was just that, to recruit some more volunteers to assess. Again, like I said, what works in Hartford is not necessarily the need in New Haven or Bridgeport.
Exactly.
And again, we're expanding throughout the state, as you mentioned, and we need more volunteers. Those regional impact teams network amongst themselves. They reach out to the local community. People know each other in that community, and they like that face and the relationships that are created, whether it is with the local nonprofits, with a state representative, with the local government, whatever it is. That's what makes it so effective and what I love about it.
I love your passion. Great to hear that back. It makes me feel really good. And you mentioned Hispanic Latino outreach, as I did. Marilyn, as you know, we want our membership and our volunteers to be indicative of the demographics of the state. We have a very high percentage of Hispanic Latinos to the population in the state of Connecticut. So again, we want that represented in all that we do. And Marilyn Diaz, our lead volunteer, has been able to do a lot of outreach in that area. I know via television, community partnerships, radio, programs that we do bilingually. So if you can briefly just elaborate a little bit on your outreach there.
Again, one of the things I love about AARP is that they are open to what works in the community. And so there may be some cultural nuances that we have to address and know. So Nora Duncan, our state oh my God, I almost called her our state director, I almost called her the state president.
But she works closely with this volunteer state
president. She works closely with all of us. And yourself and all of the staff have been so supportive in figuring out how do we get to the community and address their needs. So whether it was on TV with local TV shows, whether it was via the radio and local radio stations, and knowing the topics to pick. So for instance, with caregiving, again, a cultural nuance in the Latino community. We like to have our family with us. So the whole notion or thought of going into a nursing home may be a reality, but one must be sensitive to the relationships and the close-knit families that we have. Speaking in someone's language is also something that makes a big difference, and I am so proud of the fact that, again, AARP has been very supportive. We have a couple of programs that we do in Spanish because we translated them. Migdalia, who's a cousin of mine, we keep it in the family. And I know, and I have to say, you know, AARP becomes your family. You must know this. If you volunteer, you will get a new family of friends and supportive people. So we have two programs that we translated into Spanish. One is Fraud Watch. And the other one is Disrupt Aging. All very important to everyone in our community. So.
And speaking of Disrupt Aging, let's get a little bit into the how we show up locally in other programs. We talked about the Hispanic Latino community and the cultural nuances. And Marilyn, I just want to, on camera, thank you for your leadership there. It really has been so fabulous and so important to our state. So again, and you mentioned volunteerism too. I want to just get this in. Again, I'm Elaine Werner. I'm the program specialist for volunteer engagement. Love to hear from you directly, 860-548-3169, or you can email me at ewerner, W-E-R-N-E-R, at aarp.org. We have a process for exploring volunteerism. There's so many programs, as you're hearing about, and I can walk you through that process. So would love to hear from you. And also, Marilyn, just quickly back to the Hispanic Latino community, I just want to mention, we just have a whole bunch of materials also that are either done bilingually or completely in Spanish. We also have our own Spanish website. We'll be putting that up on the screen for you as well. Not every state office has that, but we do, again, given the demographics in the state of Connecticut. You mentioned caregiving. We have a whole resource guide on caregiving that is both in Spanish and English. You talked about generations in the Hispanic Latino community people often different generations live with each other at times. I know you've been involved in helping your own relatives in healthcare transition, should I say. But we have a program called Disrupt Aging, which is intergenerational. So now we're going to talk about some of the other programs that we do and how we show up in the community. So we have I think it's a 90-minute workshop that we do, right, Marilyn?
It is.
Disrupt Aging. So what happens if people are interested? What does it mean, Disrupt Aging, and how do we show up?
Okay, Disrupt Aging is debunking the myth that because you're a certain age, you can't do certain things. And so we change not only the way of thinking, but the way that we talk about aging. Why should you get a card that says over the hill with black banners all over it because you've turned 50? You don't do that when you're born and you have a newborn. You don't do that when you celebrate your sweet 16.
Exactly.
It's a celebration. And so when you start to talk about people that are of age, mature, we should be very proud of that and very blessed that we are that way. And so within the 90 minutes, we talk to each other about the stereotypes, the way people think about aging, and respecting that too, because you respect people's values. But then we start to expand the conversation and hope that when they leave our sessions, that they start talking to others in a different way. And you know what? It is so rewarding because I have seen men and women who are in their 80s and in their 90s who have told me they do karate, that they have gone back to school at the age of 80. And those are real things that are happening in our community. So I'm extremely proud of the fact that I am the age that I am, and I celebrate every single year. And in those workshops, that's what we do. We share that celebration of life.
And if you are interested, well defined, by the way, and you are certainly the personal example of that, as stated. But if you'd like to find out more information how AARP shows up in the Disrupt Aging program in your community, you can go to our website, www.aarp.org/CT. You're going to see a whole section for upcoming events, but again, you can seek me out and I will direct you. So we're going to go through some couple other program areas where we show up. How about Job Seeker? We have, when the recession happened many, many years ago now, there were people that were 50 plus that for the first time in their lives, or at least in 25 years or so, they had to write a resume. Maybe they hadn't used social media for looking for a job. So we go out in the community and offer resources on that as well.
Absolutely. And, I have to tell you a story. I was at a particular session. We were sponsoring an event. That's the other thing that we do. We go out into the community and we sponsor events and put out all of our programs. But there was a couple that went by and they said, they had this typical, sometimes stereotypical view of what AARP does. And I'm not old enough to be part of AARP. And turns out the gentleman was trying to re-enter the workplace. And how excited was he to know that, yes, we provide a session where we give people the tools to be able to build those resumes, to figure out, how to use social media, because you're right. Times have changed and you must use that computer, and we teach people how to do that and do it effectively in a warm environment where you're not, quite frankly, even when I was working, computers came in and I was like, oh my God,
exactly.
no,
I remember that.
I don't want to do
we
this.
both grew up without computers initially.
So exactly, and so again, we provide those tools. And who would have thunk that AARP does that kind of thing? But we do.
Well, and on that note, another program that we have with a lot of great interest that we'll briefly talk about, our Fraud Watch Network. You touched on it before. I don't have to tell you that fraud exists using your technology. And we go out in the community and do presentations. So a lot of takeaways from that, right, Marilyn, where you walk out and you can apply things to protect and prevent fraud, and they happen all over the state that we do that. But I want to move on to one other thing very quickly with you, because you know about this. We said fun with purpose. We have a lot of great local discounts, and we have a website for that, www.aarp.org/CT discounts. You may think of us for national discounts, but we do a lot of local. Talk about local. We have local discounts. So we offer every year the fourth Fridays from May through now September Free Fridays for ARP members at the Beardsley Zoo. We do an after hours at the Beardsley Zoo. And we also do wine tasting, so fun with purpose. But we have a guest coming up in just a moment because we have a particular thing to tell you about, an opportunity for a challenge grant. But before I get there, very quickly, advocacy. One of the great ways to show up locally in your community.
The reason I'm wearing my red shirt is because I'm very proud of my red shirt. We are advocates both at the federal and the local level for matters that are of major importance, whether it's Social Security, programs, home care programs, a plethora of programs, utilities. And what we do is we go out to the LOB, to the Legislative Office building, and we're known and respected for our red shirts because we provide a voice, a nonpartisan voice on issues and that affect our community. The elderly, and I have to tell you, our programs are all intergenerational. You can't, there's not one program that doesn't impact someone else of a different age. So we're very intergenerational. But we have a relationship with our state representatives. We talk to them. We get shout outs, as a matter of fact, when bills or laws are being discussed, and they shout out and say,
notice that red shirt there.
The red shirts are here. And we are so effective in terms of supporting a variety of laws, things, budgets that impact the elderly and all of us, really.
And what a better way to act locally than to meet with your elected officials. You can even do that in your own communities, your town council, your mayor, your select persons, et cetera. Marilyn, we're going to have a guest, as I said, coming up in just a moment, and you've been very much an important part of this.
Exciting.
Because you were on the review of this. But speaking of local, ARP has been able to offer community challenge grants. And it's tied to our livable communities theme to help, whether it's housing, transportation, beautifying the community. I'm going to give you less than a minute here, Marilyn, but your role in that. And if folks are interested in hearing about it too, we have a website. We're going to put that up on the screen. Let me just quickly mention it though. www.arp.org/community challenge.
And what was exciting about the community challenge grants is that they were not what was able to be funded was not dictated by AARP. Rather, it was left to the local community. They were things to help make, as you said, beautify communities, make them viable. It was intergenerational, making communities more livable for all. And the grants were really, quite frankly, quick action grants. Yes. They were intended to support either ongoing projects or to do the little things like signage that make such a big difference to people, beautifying an area. And I can't wait for our next guest because he is living proof of what a difference a little bit can make in a community.
Well said, and we're so proud to be able to offer them. And Marilyn, I also wanted to mention we will be having community challenge grants that are specifically for the state of Connecticut. You can apply for both, so stay tuned for that. You can seek me out personally. I'll be happy to tell you more about them. Marilyn, I'm so pleased to have you here. You do so much for AARP, so thank you. Thank you. You won't leave us, I know that. We so appreciate your volunteerism, your leadership, and your outreach locally in the community. And stay tuned. Coming right up, our guest is going to be here who has been a recipient of one of our community challenge grants. We'll tell you how you can apply, and he'll tell you how he has reaped the benefits of that grant from AARP. I am so happy to say that AARP has been able to offer community challenge grants. And these are tied to our very focused program on livable communities, so that as you age, you have in your community what you need so that you can age locally with quality and dignity to help towns and cities and neighborhoods thrive and age with us beautifully. So again, we have an opportunity to offer a community challenge grant. We have done that, and my guest right now has been a recipient of the grant and has been able to put it to use right in the community of Hartford. So I want to welcome Ron Pitts. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you very much, Elaine.
And Ron is the executive director of Knox, a very unique organization that actually has been around a very long time, but really does some impactful and distinctive work in leadership in making our communities, let me say, more beautiful and healthier and
Thank you.
greener.
Yes.
So Ron, if you can start a little bit, Knox is where Ron works, and Knox received a grant from AARP, and we're going to give you the ways you can apply for a grant as well. But if you can tell us firstly, Ron, a little bit about Knox and what you do there.
Sure. Well, as you said, Knox is 52 years old this
Yeah.
year, which is a little younger than I am.
And
But-
just a little younger than AARP. It's our 60th anniversary
Sure.
coming up within this approximate time frame. Yeah.
So I've been with Knox for 24 years, so half of its life I've been there, and I've been the director for 10 years. Knox does a variety of things, but ultimately what we do is improve people's lives through horticulture. And that includes making Hartford a greener, healthier, and more livable city. And that's why this challenge grant was so instrumental to, in us doing that. Part of how we do that is to make Hartford a healthier and more livable city, is we have a number of community gardens throughout the city. We actually have 22 of them. And we used the grant that AARP gave us to actually build raised beds, rebuild raised beds that were kind of crumbling and falling apart. This is a very old program. We've had this not since Knox started, but shortly after Knox started, we started the community gardening program. It has doubled in locations in the past 10 years. But some of them are, some of the beds are made out of wood. We don't use pressure-treated wood, so they have a pretty short life. So this grant actually helped us buy lumber and other materials, screws and brackets and things, to put together these raised beds to completely refurbish this wonderful little community garden on Broad Street, which is right in the center of a Hispanic community.
And you keep mentioning, if I may just ask you, raised beds. What was the reason behind the raised?
Well, when you do gardening in urban areas, you never know what's in the soil underneath. So the first thing you have to do is check the soil, test the soil. And sometimes there is lead in the soil, sometimes it's arsenic. Those are the two most, prevalent issues that we find. And so rather than take any chances, by using that soil, we build raised beds, and we actually mix the soil and the fertilizers and the compost in the raised beds, and then we have a barrier underneath, so the existing soil and the soil in your raised beds don't mix.
Okay.
That's just a safety measure that we take.
Learning something new here.
So the first thing we do is actually test the soil on anywhere we have a garden. But raised beds, as I said, have a short life, or they last about 10 years, I guess.
Okay.
And then they start to sort of rot, just like wood does.
Yeah.
And
We all age, right?
absolutely. Being exposed to the elements, it goes fairly quickly. So, and I mentioned another thing: do not use pressure-treated wood when you make raised beds.
Okay.
There's
See, all this the additional information that we're getting. Ron, also, given that AARP is, the 50 plus, and we're all aging, your project, though, also works for all different ages. You have it set up. If you can just briefly explain that.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned volunteerism before. Knox actually works with 3,000 volunteers every year.
Awesome. When you told me pre-taping,
Yes.
3,000, I was on.
Yeah,
That's fabulous.
it's pretty
Congratulations.
incredible. Yeah, and actually the ages are from the span of 6 years old right up to octogenarians and higher if they want. But it's amazing how, and it's multi-generational. Everybody works together. It's a wonderful process, and all the work we do, or I should say 99% of the work we do, is right in Hartford. So everything that the volunteers work with us, benefits the city of Hartford.
Well, and also the way you've made these beds, it allows for people, if they can't kneel,
Yes,
that they can
exactly.
work in the gardens if they're older.
That's true.
Ron, I know you came to this job, and time goes so quickly here, we just have a few minutes, but you came to this job via being you had your own landscaping business originally, and you had to volunteer because you were taking a master gardener class, right?
Absolutely, that's what happened.
And you ended up at Knox.
Yes.
So we talk about being local in your community. Ron, again, got a grant from AARP for Knox, but volunteerism locally,
That's right.
knowing your community and bringing resources to your community. Who knows it better than the local folks?
That's right. Well, I'm living proof of what you
Yes.
can do, what a stint with a nonprofit, volunteering with them, how it can lead to a future and a career. When I sold our business, we were a very successful business, sold it, and then I had the option to do whatever, not really do whatever I wanted to, but to reinvent myself.
Right. Cool.
So I wanted to actually give something back.
Yes.
So through the Master Gardeners program at UConn, came to Knox, loved it, and here I am.
Voila. And you just, nice segue on that, because our founder of AARP, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, you said you wanted to give something back. Her motto always was to serve, not to be served. So, Ron, I want to thank you again for being on the show, Real Possibilities with AARP. So proud that you've been a recipient of an AARP community grant.
And thank you very much for that.
Well, you are most welcome. We are discretionary. We try to look at the best projects or the most viable projects for it. So if you're interested in that grant, I'm going to let you know the website, www.aarp.org/community challenge. We'll also be doing now that's nationwide, but that you can throw your hat in the ring, and we will let you know more about that. You can go to that website. And also we will have coming up specific grants right here in the state of Connecticut. In addition to being able to apply for that grant, you can contact me, Elaine Werner, Program Specialist, Volunteer Engagement, 860-548-3169. Thank you, Ron, for being a guest. Marilyn Diaz, who was on previously. I want to thank you. If you're a member of AARP, 600,000 strong members in the state of Connecticut, we appreciate that. Thanks for watching. Our show was Showing Up Locally, AARP in Connecticut. We'll be back soon, locally, right here in your town. Thanks.